everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back to the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. Today's video, I'm going to be doing a little Copic coloring and creating a birthday shaker card. Some of the stamp sets that I will be using today are Itching to Tell You Happy Birthday. I'm going to use that little banner out of it. I have a little something something and then the inside and out stitched arch. I'll start by stamping out my images. I have here some 80-pound white cardstock, which is what I prefer to color on with my Copic markers. I have the little girl image here from a little something something, and I'm stamping her down in the MFT Extreme Black ink. I do like to stamp my images twice when I can. Then I'm going to add in this little cupcake. I think there's a couple little images that you could add on here to the front of that little card that she's holding, and I'm going to stamp that in the black ink as well. And then I can line up the banner. So I'll have all of my pieces I need for my card stamped out on one piece of cardstock. Then I can move on to the Copic coloring. Now you can use any coloring medium that you prefer. My go-to is Copic markers. And anytime I have an image like this, I usually start with the skin tones. For my skin tones, I'm going to my Old Faithful combination, which is E04. That color is my darkest, and I put it right under the hairline. Then I blend out with E11, E01, and E00. Next, I'll move on to the hair. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking my darkest color, which is E29, and I'm putting a line of where I think the shadows would be. Whenever there's hair overlapping another piece of hair, or for instance, her little ponytail is behind her, I'm adding little shadow marks. So I'm going to go through and just decide all of that. Same thing where her twisty is. I think the top and bottom of the twisty would have some darker areas, and then also up on top where her hair splits. So once I have that kind of mapped out, then I can come in with the rest of my colors to blend out, which is E25, E17, and R32, which I know R32 sounds kind of odd, but it makes for a really great kind of reddish tint to the hair. Now, when I'm also doing hair and I have, some larger areas to work with, I like to do flicks. So I'm not necessarily blending so much as I'm flicking the color, making sure to leave gaps of white. When you're leaving those gaps of white in between the flicks, kind of just straight lines out and then flicking up with your tip, you're leaving those highlight areas, which gives it a more natural look. So this is my first round, and there are a lot of times I will come back in to deepen up those areas, especially those shadow areas. So I did come back in and I'm adding those flicks again, and this is really going to give some contrast to those darker areas or those shadow areas compared to the highlight area. And once it's done, you'll be able to see how that R32, that red tone, really puts kind of an auburn tint to her hair color, and I think it looks just adorable. So after I have her hair colored in, I'm going to come down and work on her boots because I like to try and reuse my colors when I can so I don't have a ton of markers on my desk. And I'm using the same colors as I did for her hair except leaving out that R32. The one boot, I have the highlight area right in the center, and the other one, because it's turned, I put the highlight area off on the left-hand side. I'll add a little bit of kind of a gray tone to the sole of her boot. And then for her dress, I'm going to go with some kind of magenta colors to this. So I have RV66, which is the darkest color, and I added that right alongside of that card that she's holding because to me that's going to cast a shadow on her dress. Then I blended out with RV55 and 63, and once again going over that twice, leaving that highlight area on the left-hand side. I'll take that mid-tone color or that lightest color and just color in her sleeves and also just a couple of the stripes on her tights that she has. Once again, keeping this color combination really simple, I use those same colors for the top of her cupcake. And then for the wrapper of the cupcake, I'm going to use BG15 and BG11. Now I'm also going to tie these colors into the banner. So just using those same two colors, I added a dark color to one side of that pennant and then the lighter side. So I just have the two color combinations there for that one, and then coming in with those RVs again so that I have every other on that banner. I'm going to add a little bit of shading to the card, not a lot because I do want it to kind of be a white card. So I'm just going to come in with a T1 and a C I think it's C0 or C00. I didn't have a T0, just to add a little bit of shading. Then I'm lining up the coordinating dies and die cutting those out. I'm going to take that inside and out stitched arch and die cut that out of the center of white cardstock. And then I'm going to work on some ink blending for behind that window that I just created. Since I didn't have a lot of that teal color in her dress or in that picture at all, I decided to do my blending with some teal tones. I started with salvaged patina on one end of 80-pound white cardstock, and then coming in with peacock feathers on the other end. So I'll blend that whole panel. The two colors will kind of meet in the center, and I'm going from darkest to lightest, and I'll go back and forth between the colors just to help smooth out that transition a little bit. To add a little bit of interest to the background, I'm going to take some water and just spritz that in my hand and then flick this over the background. Normally I do this with a paintbrush, but I've really been into kind of the bigger water splatters lately. Then I'll take a paper towel and just dab up any of that excess water. To turn this into a shaker card, I'm going to take my window panel and I'm adding some tape runner on the back side of that window, and then I'm going to put this piece of acetate that I trimmed down to fit that front panel, and I'm going to just place that over it. So this is creating that window for our shaker card. And now I have foam tape, so we need to create a well to hold our shaker bits. So I fold my foam tape in half, and then I'm going to take my scissors and trim that in half so that I can fit these between those small margins. I will line the back of my panel here with that foam tape. Now you could remove the release paper from both sides of your foam tape, and that allows you to kind of form around your window a little bit, but I'm totally fine with having just that little bit of corner there. It's still going to be a great shaker card. To remove some of the stick from the sides, I just take my anti-static powder tool and brush over that, and then I just take my sleeve and wipe off my window so that there isn't so much powder on the window part. I just wanted to remove the stickiness from the edges. I dug through my shaker stash and found some little bits that kind of matched the colors a little bit. This one has a little bit of a purple tone to it, which is totally fine. I think it's going to look super cute with the image. And then I'm pulling back the release paper from my foam tape, and I'm going to add my blended background over the top. Now I need to be really super careful with this because sometimes our foam tape can kind of catch it and bows it a little bit. So I'm going to start with one corner, push that down, and then flatten that out with my hand as I go along. So I'm trying to make this as flat as possible. Then I can flip this over, kind of test out my shaker, make sure that all the bits are moving around, nothing is really stuck. And then I'll bring in my images that I stamped and colored, figure out where I want them to line up. I pretty much already knew where I wanted them. Turning this into a shaker card was actually kind of a last minute decision. So I'm really glad I did because I think it looks super cute. So I am just adding my images to the top with a tape runner. I have my little girl off in the corner, and my banner is going to string across the top in that upper right hand corner. And then I just need to do a sentiment. And I thought just having a really nice bold black piece of cardstock for my sentiment would stand out really well. So I'm prepping that black cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, and I'm stamping my sentiment in some white pigment ink, which my personal opinion, I think is the best way to get such a crisp, clear results when heat embossing on black. Just be real careful not to push too hard down because these are very thin sentiments, fine detailed, and you don't want to squish your letters. I sprinkled on my white embossing powder, and I just brushed away any little bits that were still stuck with a little paintbrush, and then I can heat set that with my heat tool. You can use a sentiment banner die to trim this out, or I'm just using my small paper trimmer to trim this down into a thin strip. I'm trimming down some black foam squares to fit behind my sentiment, and then I'll remove that release paper, and using my tweezers to kind of keep my fingers out of the way, I'm going to line this up on the front of the card. So now I'll pick this up and just give this shaker a good shake, make sure everything is moving around. I'm loving it, but I decided I wanted to add a little bit more detail to this, just some subtle detail. So I'm going to bring in my white Jelly Roll pen and add little polka dots to her dress, or you could do stripes. That would be really cute too. And I'm going to add some little highlight areas to the cupcake and also to her boots. I thought about doing it to the hair, but I was really nervous. I liked how the hair turned out. I didn't want to mess anything up. So just some little detail to add to her dress and boots and the cupcake. That finishes off my card project for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.